Hey, what's going on, beautiful people? Right, so I had an encounter maybe a couple of days ago. Right, it was at the gym, and I met Mitch, and I met a couple different peoples like Mitch, but this was just different in the way that I guess we went about everything, right? And it started bringing back, semblance of the prodigal son. And so if you know the story, right, the prodigal son, he's just like, hey, he goes to the father, give me all my inheritance, give me everything. Like, I'm done, right? I don't want to follow these rules. I don't want to follow in your footsteps, right? I'm done. I'm going to go and explore the world, right? And he finds, oh, it's fun for a couple of, weeks, months, years. And then everything sort of goes to crap, right? He doesn't have anything left, to the point where, he goes and he's basically working for pig slop. And the whole time, like he's had this like perfect situation going on. And when I think about this encounter that I had with Mitch, it was, he was going through some things, drug addiction, and it was like I could see him because he was a lot of the stories that I had previously heard. And okay, like I fell into drugs, and like now I'm in AA, and they teach us that God is the way, and he has to be stronger than the drug addiction. And so we're having this conversation, and he starts to telling me about this anxiety that he has, right? He's like, oh, I'm getting older, and now things are happening to my body. And it was like, oh, boom, connection, right? Holy Spirit starts speaking. And next thing I know, right, I'm talking about like this thing that I went through, right? And I had anxiety, depression for like a good 2 years, where it was so crippling and so bad that I was, like I was never, how to say it? Like I was never thinking about like anything unaliving, but I was like, man, there's no way that I can live forever, if this continues. And I'm telling him this story, and then I was like, yo, I fell to my knees in the shower because I just couldn't take it anymore. And I said, God, I relinquish everything to you. And you could tell like he's got this moment because it's exactly what he was going through. And at this time, it's just like, man, God's reaching out to you, right? Telling you to come home. And then we had another guy in there, right? Was not, and I couldn't really even identify it at the time. I saw it afterwards. But, this guy just starts talking about, like some nonsense. And I'm just like, okay, like, man, dude, I'm trying to, like pray for this guy. I'm trying to get a story. And ultimately, right, it was like, man, we were going through the same things, right? Like he's getting introduced to the word. And it's like, man, God's here. He's pushing towards this guy. And the other guy was like a demon, right? He was just like, oh, just like trying to interrupt and talking about nonsense. And the thing is, I couldn't identify it because he wasn't doing it like you would see with the street preachers, where they just come and interrupt and they're throwing all sorts of language, or maybe they're spitting or throwing stuff. Like it wasn't like that. He was just talking about things that were just not necessary to the story, or things that were unrelated. And I'm just like, man, I'm trying to pray for this guy. And eventually, right, this guy's like, okay, he's getting the nonsense from that guy. He's like, probably feeling stirred up, like from me. And so he looked like he was just overwhelmed. And he was just like, man, I got to go. I'm going to hop in the cold plunge really quick. And so I had to hop in the cold plunge anyway. It's not that I was following him, but, like I was in the cold plunge, and I'm just like, man, like, sorry about that. I'm not trying to be all preachy and everything, but that's just sort of, like something that happens when the Holy Spirit comes over me. And, but I know that, you had mentioned going through, a couple of these things. And sometimes, it's just like, it's so hard to put into words. But I think anytime this happens, and it's happened in my life quite often, and I was just telling him, hey, this is the Lord, right? Wanting you to come back home, right? Wanting you to return. And so I was, in that moment, everything started to, come to a full and making sense. And, like nothing ever really came out of that, right? So, you can only hope seeds are planted, right? Sometimes we plant seeds and we can't watch them grow, right? Sometimes we watch the seed grow, right? But we're not the one that plants them. And that's okay, right? Because if you're a believer, you're just a believer, right? You're going to do everything necessary to make sure that God's will is being done. And I just thought that was so cool, right? And as I'm sitting here, reading through, just like the prodigal son parable, it is so amazing that, like he's always like calling his children, right? He always cares about us, right? All the billions of people in the world. And he's like reaching out to you, right? And so, guys, don't squander that, right? If you're a believer and, if you've walked with Jesus and you felt that, he puts me in situations like this, like more than I can count. And it's totally amazing. But if you're one of those people that he's reaching out to, I need you to just, grab hold, relinquish, all the control that you feel, relinquish all the pride, relinquish everything, to Jesus so that, like he can do a work in your life. Please, please, please. And guys, pray for Mitch, right? Pray for Mitch because, I don't know his full name, but, he seemed like he was going through it. He seems like he was getting better, but you can tell a seed was planted. And so I just thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys later.